Thank you for this very interesting presentation. I think we now have a clear understanding of the whole procedure, what went wrong, what was successful. But I'm sure our audience is going to have questions. Please free ask to ask any of the keynote speakers. Again, you are first. Mr. Andreas Sosilos.
About the initiative, we have a Cyprus, a smaller number for the population to require signatures. Does that mean that the other countries involved, the 7 countries, need to get more signatures of their ratio? Or the 1 million is just a figure which can be less if a small country gets into the 7 countries?
Very technical question. Yes, for the 1 million is an overall goal for all over the 28 EU member states. But in order for an ECI to get started, you need 7 representatives from 7 different EU countries. That doesn't matter from the size. Maybe it could be the 7 biggest EU member states or the 7 smallest. But then there is a distribution of an analogy, let's say, of how many is the minimum requires the support statements for each country. For Cyprus, which is a small European country, it is 4,500. For Germany, which is the biggest, if I'm not mistaken, Iakovos, it was 80,000 or more.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, or more. So even if you get in the 7 EU countries that are running with representatives the initiative, and you get all the minimum, that doesn't mean that you get the 1 million as well. You have to expand, to extend your promotion and your awareness campaign to the whole of the EU if you want to get successful in the 1 million signatures collection. But at the same time, maybe you get 10 million signatures from only big countries. If you don't have this condition satisfied that at least from the 7 representative states in the Commission get the minimum, then the proposal is not accepted, at least according to the rules of this procedure.
This threshold is percentage of the population of this country?
Okay, it was set up more or less like it was an analogy to the MEPs. Like we have 6 MEPs, they put like this threshold of 4,500. For Greece, it was 16,500. Yes, more or less on population and other standards.
Just to add something on what Vasilis said about the distribution of numbers. In the report we have distributed, there's a whole page in which you'll find the table of this distribution, very detailed. Now, I would like to congratulate the presenters before. Thank you very much. And it's not a question, it's just an observation about human rights, because this has been one of the overarching issues that has been raised today in our debate. And I'm going to refer to a book I've been reading recently by a Turkish academic, a friend of mine, Kenan Kayı, who has been doing research on human rights in Turkey, and he's looked into all textbooks of all disciplines, and he has found that there's a reference to human rights in 3,600 cases. Out of these 3,600 cases, the 3,000 are negative references. I just wonder how many references of these references and how many violations we have in our textbooks in Cyprus. And this is something we have to look into very closely in the near future, having in mind the prospect of solving the Cyprus problem, because applying the agreement of a solution might prove much more difficult than pursuing the solution. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would like first to congratulate all the speakers. It was a very informative experience for me because I know little about the EU Parliament, Commission, and so on. Well, I represent, actually, I'm a simple citizen, but I'm also a member of the Association of Civil Engineers in Cyprus, which has the common issue with the EU representatives is that we are concerned about the quality of life and the quality in general of the environment. And now, I just want to comment that what is, in your opinion, why the non-EU members do not appreciate the European values and standards, and are there any ways to persuade them to understand the advantages that the EU members can offer? Probably this is a challenge to see where we go wrong, European citizens and governments, and try to make things better for the European Union. Thank you.
It's a very big discussion. I would just want to say, when recently, in the beginning of the year, I was in the States, where we, as part of the civil society, had the chance to talk to some school students regarding Europe and where we come from. It was quite interesting to see that walking into the discussion, the youth over there, they had somewhat a completely different idea of where we were coming from, and they had exactly the same question about why the rest of the world does not follow the American way of thinking, and why we are so different. I found it, the whole discussion we had at the time is that I personally believe that the perception of one has is indeed very much controlled by the environment where they grow up in. I was actually able to find many things, many values that are catered for in the States. I was able to find that they were quite good, but I did find that some sort of ways, let's say the healthcare, for example, which is the easiest to show. Over here in Europe, it's a completely different notion. It's interesting to see that our values and what we aspire to are considered to be good for us. I am sure that there are many countries around the world that they value their own, and some of them, especially if I remember the time when, during the accession of Cyprus, we were aspiring to something bigger and something different. It's there that the NGOs have quite a lot of influence, or they should be able to influence that thinking or that understanding. The values I think that we all share and we all agree that it's right to progress as human beings and make our life much, much better. We should be able to discuss and get ideas and common values of how this diversity of other people should be embraced by us as well. And it's what makes this discrimination, for example, that we talk most of the time about the different minorities, very, very important. When I think one of the good values that we have as European citizens is this understanding, or at least this aim, to include everybody in this family. We should never think that our way is the best way, but I think that we should at least be open to discussions. Otherwise we keep it all very close. I would like to touch upon a different matter that it was raised before, both from Susanna and Vasilis, regarding the tensions within members. Susanna was talking on a European level, and Vasilis was more in a local level. I think as NGOs, we ourselves grow as well, and we have to grow. We start off with an idea that some people have about how things should progress. And then, exactly as your question says, we find that, oh, there's somebody else that has a little bit of a different idea. How the discussion that happens within the NGOs, and I'm talking even smaller NGOs locally, is shaping how they react. It's exactly the same like when you're going to Europe and you have much bigger organizations to deal with. Initially, you had one organization from one country, and then suddenly you have to cooperate with others for this common understanding and shape this understanding that we all have of what Europe should be. I find that this, well, personally, I've also experienced that, to be honest. The politics that take care, even within the NGOs, internationally, not just on the European level. I know that everybody, for example, whenever you have a big discussion, you have eventually one sort of paper that comes out to say what this discussion that took days to perform was happening. And then you find hundreds, if not more, of NGOs trying to get a little line in that paper that actually encompasses in the whole of the understanding of their organization that they've been fighting for years. And that little line is then put on into more and more of a discussion internally and interpretation. So different people interpret that little line completely differently, which is quite interesting to see in general. But because we all fight for that little line in one document, we have to work together. And if we want to get together, and I mean the LGBTI movement has worked wonders with the feminist movement, because the ideas and the bottom line is the same, and it should be the same. And this is where the thread that I mentioned before is very important. That of human rights. If we're able to decode the lowest common understanding with which we should all agree on, it's human rights, although we do find politicians sometimes they have their own interpretations there as well, then we can move on forward. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Can I say, just to add on some of what Costa was saying, just in reference to your comment. It's interesting what you raised, because I mean, we find that while we might find difficulty in convincing, I'm not exactly sure what you were referring to, but difficulty in convincing other countries to agree to the same values that the EU has. While at the same time, we have a huge influx of refugees and asylum seekers coming from outside the EU who think that the EU will safeguard their interests and they will have a better life here. So it's a little bit, one thing is what governments are doing, and another thing is is how people perceive the West, the European Union and the United States. At the same time, one reason I would find for this is that the European Union is having a legitimacy crisis of its own. The UK wants out. Well, that's a broad statement, but there's all this movement within the EU questioning whether is this the way we want to go with the Greek crisis, with the Greek financial crisis. I think one thing that came out of that was, what does the European Union mean after all, and how does it represent the interests of its citizens? And there's all these various developments happening on a EU level that is making people we look at voter turnout for the European Parliament elections, very low, particularly low among young women as well. Again, there's for various reasons. there seems to be also a democratic deficit within the European Union and a crisis of legitimacy, depending on who you talk to, but it's there, and it's something that has sort of surfaced in the last couple of years, and I think it's an issue that's going to have to be addressed at some point. Just to go to pick up on what Costa was saying, something that I had forgot to mention, and I just thought of it now again, is that we think of the EU institutions as if they're things and not people, right? And the EU institutions are made up of people. And in the same way that in Cyprus we might say, we're going to work with, and I'm just going to throw out names here, we're going to work with Rula Mavronikola in ADEC, and we're going to work with Stella in VC, and this is how we do it. And we're going to identify someone in Vigo, that we look for people regardless of their party affiliation. And I think the same thing happens on a different level in the European Union, which I think this cross-party alliances are really important, and to work with people from across parties. But if we look at technocrats in the European Commission, again, it's really, who is there and what their personal interests are, and whether they're particularly sensitive on an issue makes the world of difference. So we see the European Union as this, like these giants, when in fact they're made up of people. And if the right people are there, sometimes, unfortunately, that's the case, because it seems that yes, there are mechanisms in place. But really what makes the difference is to have the right individuals in place. And we've seen that very much in the case of Cyprus, because we don't have any mechanisms at all. So if there's the right person in Parliament at the right time in the right committee, we'll be able to put our case across. If there's the right minister in the right ministry at the right time, we'll be able to put something on the agenda. And, and I can say here as well that, for example, trafficking for us, which was a huge issue, and it was, as it is for Gisa, when the government changed, not that the previous government had done absolute wonders, but at the very least, NGOs had access to the Ministry of Interior at the time, right? Because whether it was rhetoric or put in practice, trafficking was considered a priority. So the door was open, NGOs had access, we could at least discuss the issues. Government changed, another minister is there, priorities are different, the door is closed. So it makes a difference who is there. And I think that we should keep that in mind when we think about all these institutions and how we engage with them.
And we keep on fighting not to have this ad hoc approach every time. It's a real struggle every time, because you end up having the same process for similar cases. Again, something that will take years, and then again, and it is really a struggle, and a very tiring struggle as well. Yeah.
Just to add to the concerns raised before, just a second, and it was maybe the professionals here in civil society that they have more experience might note all these things, and it was mentioned before regarding mechanisms from Susanna, like how to get familiar with different kind of mechanisms. I would like to add here that even without the ECI, this let's say, issue or possibility of being more active in a society was there from private inspirations. It was there from Avaz, for example. It's a very well known all over the world. And I guess the EU, anyway, some committees there realized that this is maybe a future on the process of deliberative democracy. This deliberative democracy and deliberation culture we don't have in Cyprus, as developed as in the rest of in Europe at least, and in the States you have experience there. And so that mechanism, even without the ECI, was there or would be discovered. What is interesting from our experience and involvement in this Invest in Education initiative is that it was developed completely different in the 7 EU member states from that committee. From one country, for example, they just got, 100,000 signatures because some university, I think that was in Bulgaria, the University Society supported the petition, and they could get this more easier. But what is much even further interesting is that in Cyprus, it managed to gather together people that were always interested in social issues and socio-economic issues in our neighborhood, in our city, in our country. But at the same time, we see that democracy here works differently. It's a very young democracy in any case. And we continue our effort. And actually, we manage to make to organize two events on this related initiative. And finally, we have a document after an internal and external deliberation on how to develop proposals for the educational system in Cyprus. And okay, our main core aim was the invest in education, not to cut funding education all over the EU, but as I presented earlier, we focused here on quality, and in quality we incorporated a more criticism approach on how education is delivered in public or private institutions in Cyprus, and also we gave strength to human rights points and issues. And all these things prove that it is possible even for Cyprus. We are a small state, a young democracy. It is possible to establish, to found a group that can work together, network, of course, and cooperate with other organizations. And even through this meeting, it's a good chance to meet other NGOs, initiatives, and causes. Thank you very much.
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Katerina. I'm a student of University of Cyprus in European Studies and Foreign Languages. It's not really a question. First of all, I wanted to apologize for my English. I'm not so good. Actually, I remember myself around 2007, 2008, having to write down in the exams about the values of the European Union and the help for each other and the unity and everything. And growing up, I see that by watching all these debates on TV, on social media, that Europe doesn't really represent the European values that is built from. I think that they really promote somehow hate between different countries. And mostly when I last watched the open debate of Tsipras at the European Parliament, I really saw, I was really impressed by the hate that some politicians show, that they don't really try to show the unity that we should have to each other and everything. And I really believe that we should count on education to build whatever we are trying to I don't know how to explain it, to achieve, yes, but it's not always enough. What we educate people, we should make it happen in actions. Because when you always hear about all these things, about the unity and everything, and you see something totally different happening, you're just saying that it's just words, and at the end of the day, each country is working for their benefit and only for their benefit, and they don't have open mind, and they're just trying to make people being actually hating other countries than helping other countries. You cannot say that all Greeks are not working, and that's why their economy is destroyed. You cannot say that if there are some thieves in, I don't know, in Germany, that all Germans are thieves. You cannot say that all black people are, I don't know what. And at the end of the day, that's what they show by their actions at the European Parliament. That's what I see. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Your comments would be more relevant to our first panel, of course. Do you want to add
Can I?
something? Just a second,
No.
because you have two microphones, so first the lady and then just a second.
Sorry, it means ladies first. Okay, my name is Zoe Bennett. I represent the Women's Federation for World Peace. And I just wanted to make a comment exactly on what she said. We need to realize that EU and US are very different in their nature. US is made of people who came from different countries, but ready as individuals to turn the page and start a homogenized country or group of countries or group of individuals, while EU is made of countries that have different culture, proud of it, different languages, proud of them, different traditions, and they keep them. So perhaps the character that could change in the EU and can make it more unified would be the desire to share these cultures and to get to know the cultures so we can avoid these generalizations. Basically, that each country can have the motion of contributing to the whole. It's not the case. Like she said exactly, each country cares about its own benefit from the rest of the countries. And I would say I represent also the United Nations. I mean, our organization is a UN NGO. Greatly, it is also the case for UN. All the countries that are in the UN, it's very doubtful that are really definitely for contributing to the United Nations, if not my nation from the others. That's the point I want.
Thank you. Now it's your turn.
Okay. Mr. Kiliaris, I just want to point out something in the book. I just saying a change of approach as regards to education, a change in, this is our country in order to find its way needs. A change of approach as regards to education, a change in the structure of education, both quantitatively and qualitatively, as well as a change in the role citizens are expected to play in a democratic and sound state entity. In your last few sentences, sort of before you closed, you mentioned about having a proposal for education and sitting down with other entities and NGOs and sort of networking and coming to these kind of proposals. And that in relation to other issues with regards to LGBT rights, women's rights, within the educational system. It's a simple question. Where does the church have influence? Because I can't speak for other countries and religious entities in other countries, but in our country, the church has a lot of power, and not only in politics, which maybe in other countries doesn't have that kind of influence, but in education, it's very big. And I really want to, I'd like to know what is the sort of consensus of how I can understand sort of sitting down with the church and discussing certain issues, but where does the church sort of, I mean, how can we really sort of make leaps and sort of grow when there are definite sort of strategies by the church in limiting these educational factors?
Okay, contentious issues, very difficult you raised, but You know, as it's well known, according to the Cyprus constitution, after the president of the country, who is following is the archbishop, not the president of the parliament, not anybody else. This is constitutional. Yes, yes, according to the protocol. The protocol. Yes. Yeah, but it's the protocol. It's there. Due to the historical facts, you know, ethnarchia, etc. The same time, let's be pragmatic. There is a big influence, and this maybe could be also considered as more personal opinion, but there is big influence and, of the church to educational, or to the educational system in Cyprus. On our behalf, we started 1.5 years ago this initiative focusing on funding. At the same time, we realized that funding of education in Cyprus is actually over the medieval, I would say, yeah, medieval, in the EU, and the medium, sorry, yeah, Mesos Oros, okay. So we know that, we acknowledge that here there is sufficient funding, but at the same time, how is distributed? How is allocated to the different priorities set up from each government in the constitution, etc. And to be realistic, if we understand that the church has very big power here and it can influence specific issues on education in Cyprus. Okay, our aim is not to come to a fight, let's say, conflict with the church. Our aim is to have a deliberation on the issue and have more voices, maybe doubting this or giving another opinion, giving their different critical approach, how it should be education in Cyprus, and incorporate all this together, and then proceed, hopefully, when democracy here develops further, proceed to accordingly and try to have real results. I don't know if you want something to add to this, but this is our actually was our approach. We know how contentious issue this is for Cyprus, so we didn't want to get into a conflict on this, but through our paper, through our meetings, through our discussion, through the events we participate, we are open for additions on our documents. That was actually what you saw there. It was from May 2015, and we continue developing the document.
Now we will receive a few more comments, and then we can continue in an informal level, while also making some contact making during lunch. But first, I made a map on my mind because I can see all of you. So Kostas wants to add something. Then it's, I don't remember your name. This is Andrula. Then it is, yes. And then it's Andrea. Okay, so, okay. Yes, but try to be quick.
I'll try to keep my sorry, I don't remember your name again. Katerina. Katerina, you mentioned before the issues about the values of the EU, and I just want to say that one of the reasons what we see that, for example, you said the discussion in Cyprus, we see it here in Cyprus. I think this is a general problem with the politicians. As Susanna said, the institutions are made of people. The people that go to the EU, they say one thing, and unfortunately we notice that when they come back here, locally to Cyprus, and this is the same case about everywhere in the EU, they go with a different agenda locally. For example, on LGBTI rights, just giving an example, I'm sure there are loads about flying around, but all the parties here in Cyprus went to the European Parliament and they voted for rights to the LGBTI, specifically asking for a roadmap on the progression of the rights that decrease homophobia. Then people politicians come back to Cyprus, the same parties come to Cyprus and they have a completely different rhetoric about how Cyprus should be, progress on these rights. We've seen, for example, in May, the discussions about the homophobic rhetoric happening in the parliament, and they were flying everywhere. There were actually very homophobic statements in the parliament itself, while in the same case, you had the same politicians going to Europe and wanting to show how progressive we were and how great of this country is in the rights, for the rights of the people. This is double standards. We use the EU many times to progress things that should have been done locally. We blame on the European Union, and this is the problem. It's not so much about the values of the European Union per se. It's how those values are interpreted by different peoples, especially politicians, I would say, locally on each country, not just Cyprus, locally. So the example you had was from Greece. This is happening everywhere. This is happening to the UK. This is happening. The interpretation of those values and how we need to progress further is being done differently. So, and one more comment about the, Ms. Zoe said about the US. Let's not forget, as Vasil said, we are a very young democracy here. The EU is a project that is a very big currently. We are not so homogenized, it's true, but let's not forget that in the, for the US to become much more homogenized as well, you need to have a civil war happening, which we haven't. We need to have these discussions of no, a civil war. The Second World War was before the EU, and this is the reason why the EU started as an idea, because we said, okay, enough of this. But the EU per se, it started off as a steel and coal mines establishment. It was completely different to what it now is, and it's a progress. It's a work in progress, which in comparison to what it was 50 years ago when it was set up, obviously it's a huge thing. And this is where you have the voices coming in. The British say, well, this is not what we signed for in the first place. But then again, you do need to have the discussion. And let's hope that we're not going to go to a civil war, let's say, within the EU to be able to impose each other's ideas on countries. But it is, so far, the most successful project of cooperation between countries that ever has been around in the whole world. So we are very young. We are very young, and we're not going to be around to see it going huge. I'm sorry to disappoint people. I see that it's going to happen well after my lifetime, but it will be. It will take time, and it will happen, hopefully.
My name is Androula Shadi. I represent a non-for-profit organization that recycles textiles. We've been around for about 5 years, and we have a lot to show for these 5 years. We've done a lot of hard work, and part of our work, apart from giving free clothes to all the people who are on welfare benefit, we do a lot of subsidization in schools. So what you said about education is investment. We believe that environment education is investment in health and life, and investing in what should be happening in on our planet. And recently I applied together with a Turkish Cypriot teacher. We are both teachers in bicommunal groups for the Stelios Awards Fund, and we received one of these awards, and we are going to do environment work in schools on both sides of the divide. And part of the work is going to be planting traditional vegetable seeds so that these schools will have their own vegetable patches of bio vegetables. And our aim is to keep seeds every time so that we can increase the number of people who will take plants away to plant in their field, in their garden, in their pots, etc. And I feel very thankful for being here today, for NGO and the EU for organizing this. And the information has been very precious. And I'm also thankful to meeting all these wonderful people here. I thank you, and I hope that this little seed that we are going to plant for environment work on both sides, Turkish Cypriot schools and Greek Cypriot schools, is going to be just the beginning for a reunited Cyprus when the solution comes soon. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to comment on something. My name is Hannah Essing. I'm an Erasmus student on University of Cyprus. And first of all, I was very impressed by everything you said today and very inspired. What I want to say is that I think that it should not be the goal of the EU to be like the US, because that's not what we're here for. We want to have a unity, and we have shared values, but we are not striving for a homogenized culture. Because in Europe we have a lot of great cultures and a lot of ancient cultures, and I think the goal is to respect cultures, and I think this is what we're here for. And I want to say something similar as you did, that we are very young, and something like the EU has never been there before, so we don't know where we're going. I think a lot of people have different expectations. That is why it's so hard to define goals. And I think this is a work in progress. And yeah, I think the US, they advertise their homogeneity and they say they have a shared culture, but in reality there are a lot of things happening that don't agree with that. Like a lot of people of color that have to be afraid to be shot on the street, and that's why I don't think we want to strive to be like the US, and I just wanted to comment on that.
Andrea?
Thank you. I'm Andrea Menga. I'm part of SIL Cyprus, an NGO that, well, let's just say that I'm not from Cyprus. I'm from Italy. I just arrived, and it's not a lot of time since I'm part of SIL, so I'm not the best person to give information about what we do, but let's say it's about education, non-formal education, and skill building. Okay, what I wanted to say actually is not relative to this. It's part of my experience as an Italian. It's a country that has actually suffers from a heavy influence from the church, the Catholic Church. So the thing is, how are we dealing with it? It's similar to what these people are doing with the European Union, but on a less formal level. It's more about influence and power that they hold, with money, with connections with political parties and whatnot. But as soon as the civil society progresses, church cannot turn their head forever. This happened with Galileo. This is happening right now with LGBT rights. This is a personal opinion, but I think that when the previous Pope resigned, which is actually like the second time in history, it was more for, because the previous Pope was actually a lot more conservative than the current one. So evolution in civil society can improve situations that are outside of how to say, mechanisms that are put in place for people to actually interact with power. It's non-formal, it's based on influence rather than laws. But there is a way to do that. It just takes time and effort, as it does with anyway with your European Union. So yeah, provided time and effort, it will change. It's just a young republic. It just needs to be. It just needs to get some work on it. That's it. I just wanted to add these details.
Thank you very much. At this point, we have to be very fast because our guests, they have prior engagements, so they have to leave. So, Dr. Bernadette, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Bernadette. I was a volunteer doctor for 10 years with Yatrito Gosmos with Mrs. Eleni Theop. And I am just back from Nepal, and I'm working with my own NGO, a Symposium Humanitarian Organization of Cyprus, a specialist for earthquake, tsunami, war, because this is my main work, what I do in any country if there is disaster or the emergency. I would like to talk about the education as sir. You spoke that there is a it is a big need in Cyprus, especially to educate, first of all, the behavior in the police. You know, when we have, they need to education, you know, and they, and also we need this education also for the, to educate, to help the elder people who lying in the villages and there is no help. They are in the remote areas and they need help, medical help, they need talking, they need some nice words, not that lying in just in the last corner of Cyprus. And I think that is very important that people, we do education for the schools, we do educate people, we educate everybody, but we need the main things that we have to do something for the people in the remote areas, especially the elderly people. And my main subject is to empower the women in Cyprus, that with this crisis we could help the young people and women that they can help their family and to come out from this crisis. Because I have experienced 10 years, I work in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, all these war countries. And we done lot of work with the people, we done lot of work with the children and many, many things because we have to educate children in school for the drugs. And I have spoken to Archbishop Chrysostomos, he knows me very well. I said to him, I am trained, give me a small place where we can have small center that with my NGO, I can help the young people, that we don't educate these children, that we don't destroy our young nation. And that is, they are our site, you know, for a young generation will build up the Cyprus tomorrow. So, thank you very much. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today. I'm sure we are going to leave this room even more inspired to become or to resume our active involvement in civil society organizations. Please stay with us. I'm sure we have a lot to discuss during lunch, and it's a good opportunity for informal contact making. Thank you all very much.